Greetings, friends. My name is Jessa McLean, and I'm here to provide you with some blueprints of disruption. This weekly podcast is dedicated to amplifying the work of activists, examining power structures, and sharing the success stories from the grassroots. Through these discussions, we hope to provide folks with the tools and the inspiration they need to start to dismantle capitalism, decolonize our spaces, and bring about the political revolution that we know we need. Greetings. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Greetings, everybody. My name is Rawan and Ramini. I'm a Palestinian filmmaker and a community organizer. I'm also a mom of two. And I like to introduce myself as a mom of two because after becoming a mom, a lot of my views to this world has changed. I started seeing it in a lens that is way more scary. And it shakes me to my bones, and it pushes me to organize even more and to work even more to make this world a better place for our kids to grow up in. I'm the director and writer of Ana Falastini, a documentary series that talks about the Palestinian identity in the diaspora.
Thank you. Jada, please.
Ietsap aweli al CISCM si alahwa ich imechne eten entha was wellam entha Jada-Gabrielle Pape tanachat la setnich I snonemoch o homeoch heitsapka I skopmesh I tzlewatooth I masquiam mestimoch. My name is Wutwaswelam. My taxpayer name is Jada-Gabrielle Pape. I come from the Snuneymuxw and the Setnich Nations on Vancouver Island. I'm Coast Salish, and I live in the diaspora of Coast Salish people from our homelands in the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples and their ancestors' territories that is colonially known as East Vancouver. I am the director of From the Salish Sea to Palestine. That is an ongoing film project about the intersection between Palestinians and Coast Salish people and activists and artists who are living in solidarity and living in resistance to violent, ongoing settler colonialism. I am also a mom, and I have a fantastic 21-year-old who is, I think, my greatest teacher and the being who centers me and grounds me and humbles me the most. And I'm also a daughter and a sister and an auntie. And I think being an auntie is right up there with being a mother, that it is one of the roles that we can very gently and walk in the world and provide guidance and support for many, many young people who are both Hualmoch, which is Indigenous, and also Palestinian and any other people who are pushed to the margins can find safe auntieship in me. And also, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having us. And Rawan, it's so nice to see you.
You too, Jada. It's always nice to see you.
You folks are sisters in filmmaking. Why is that medium a choice of yours to make the connections that you're making and tell the stories that you're telling? Jada, you can go first if you like. Rawan got to go first last time.
Oh, I was looking forward to hearing Rawan's answer. Well, so it's storytelling. I think that's what films are. Is they are a way to uplift the stories of people and of places and of times, and we get to do it visually. So for so many people in the world, we learn both through sound, we learn through looking, and we learn always through story. And so film is one way to work in the world and sort of slowly and methodically build up storytelling. And I think one of the things that I like about being part of a team who works on documentaries and stories is that I don't have to do it alone, because so much of arts practices are done in isolation and are done in a solitary way. And I could never do any of my work without my fantastic kin at Drawing Wisdom. And so, yeah, maybe that's my whole answer.
And let me start by saying that I've been a fan of Jada way before we became friends and way before we became sisters. I used to see her at the rallies, um, doing a speech or just being there, existing. And I've always wanted any connection to be her sister. So, and I found my favorite medium of expressing myself, which is film. I found that to be the thing that me and her have, one of the things that we have in common. And I think that's how it became to be. I believe that film, the thing about film, in addition to everything that Jada said, the thing about film is that it's timeless. It stays. It's gonna outlive us. I used to work in theater, and my heart is always in theater. But the thing about theater, yes, it affects people. Yes, it provokes emotions and it sends a message, but it's then and there, and then it's gone. But with film, it's timeless. It's gonna outlive us. It's a gift that I would leave behind for my children and for my grandchildren, and it's a way to tell our true story. Because looking at everything that, like looking at the media, whether it was news, shows, films that mention Palestine, that has anything to do about Palestine, Palestinian people, or even indigenous people. It shows us in a lens that is so far from our truth, is so far from who we are, who we want to be, who our core of what it means to be Palestinian and indigenous. So, coming together to work on this and to tell the true story by us, unfiltered, unapologetic, is one of the best ways to connect. And I'm so honored that Jada thought of me to be part of her film.
I've seen you describe Anna Falastina, or one of the purposes of the series is to, like you say, tell the truths, tell the stories, but also where the humanity is centered rather than the occupation and the genocide, because that has been most people's exposure amongst the other awful things in the media, but just generally their knowledge of it is horrific, right? And in that the humanity becomes lost, it's death and destruction. Why else is that important for you to spend time on in this moment where everything seems so very urgent and fast paced, but you take the time to make art and preserve and display your culture?
I want to note that me and my film partner Dalia, who worked with me on a Palestini, we worked together on it. We started the work before the genocide has started. We started this project in June of 2023, and then we started filming in September of 2023, and a month after the genocide started. We decided to tell the story because we decided to tell the story the way we did tell the story, because we have not seen it done this way before anywhere. We're telling the story in a way that has never been told before this way. And yes, it focuses on the culture and the beauty, but you cannot distance that from the occupation. You cannot distance that from the horrific things that have been done to us, that created generational traumas that we will carry forever. Nothing is going to undo that. However, we take all of that and we um, work our magic as Palestinians and bring it back as resistance and as beauty and as offerings to help not only free us, but free everybody who's under occupation. So we decided to tell our story the way it is supposed to be told, focusing first on who we are as Palestinians, and who occupation is part of who we are, but it's just a small part of who we are. And it's a passing part. It's not going to stay. It is just a smudge of ink in our history, and we're going to get over it. And we're going to stay who we are. And we created it as a gift for our people because we don't feel like we are seen in the right way. Uh, we are not presented in the right way, and so we made it as a gift to our people first, and then to everybody else who wants to watch it and learn about us.
That's fair. Absolutely.
And I wonder if I just want to piggyback on something that Rawan said, and that is that the occupation is just a blip in time. And, for us as Hualmoch Mestimoch here in our own homeland, so Hualmoch means belongs to the land, and Mestimoch means people. So we are belongs to the land people. And we have been here forever and ever, but the occupation in my territory, it's only been here for about 150 years. And so for me to see myself as a reflection of the ongoing colonial occupation here means that they have permeated my Hualmochness, my belonging to my own land. And so we belong to each other, we belong to our homelands, and I deeply believe that when we center the occupation as part of our identity, then we live in pretty hollow places, because so-called Canada has contributed exactly nothing to the identity of my people, yet we can only have a passport that says Canadian. That is the option. But that is not my identity. I don't identify as a Canadian person. I identify as Hualmoch. And I really feel like in order for people to understand what it's like to be Indigenous or what it's like to be Palestinian, I really feel like to walk along in solidarity means seeing us as whole people, not just as a people who are living in resistance, because we don't have a choice but to live in resistance. And we don't have a choice but to tell our stories, because nobody else will tell our stories. And if they do, they will tell it as an afterthought or as an othering or in the context of so-called Canada or the Zionist occupying state of so-called Israel.
I wonder, Jada, how you feel when you hear a lot of the political narratives center around Canadian sovereignty and real deep concerns about asserting so-called Canadian sovereignty, considering what you just said, and the interference that's been made with with your own.
Yeah, I mean, I get really angry, to be honest, that that people who are Canadian, who are so-called Canadian, unless they are refugees or people who have fled for their own survival, when people are settlers who come here as a way to just settle the land or and live out of relationship with Indigenous people, it feels like that identity has asked them to trade in their own humanity. So they didn't come and arrive with stories or with offerings. And what a different world it would be if people came and said, I'm here, I'm a guest, what can I bring? How can I be in relationship? But that just simply isn't the case. And I know it's a deliberate tool of colonialism that you come and you trade in all of your identity, all of the homeland that you have left, and you get this brand new shiny identity of being Canadian. And then there's this patriotism in Canada where Canadians love to be the underdog and the gentle pacifist country, and like, poor little Canada, we're just the little brother of America, the big bully. And then, we're seeing the elbows up and the rise in Canadian flags on people's doorsteps and bumper stickers and T-shirts. And they somehow feel like that's different than the Americans wearing MAGA hats or wearing American flags, but they are exactly the same. They are violent colonial settler states who are continuing to try and erase the existence of Indigenous peoples. And so when people talk about Canadian sovereignty, I like, fuck off, get fucked. It's really boring. It's really slow. And also it contributes to the erasure of Indigenous people. And that's the piece where I feel like we have completely normalized in Canada that it's hard to know the truth about Indigenous people. It's hard to meet Indigenous people. And the more we normalize that, we put the onus back on Indigenous people to tell the truth of what violent colonial settler occupation is doing to us.
The parallels are endless, Rawan. Right? The colonial state, the occupation, the attempt at erasure. Jada gets very emotional, I see in the clip in the film, talking about these connections and seeing herself and her people in the Palestinian struggle. Do you want to speak more to those parallels so Canadians that are listening who think perhaps you're just kind of sisters who found each other through struggle that are similar, which is true, but these similarities have historical ties, right? This isn't just a coincidence that what is happening in Palestine happened here and continues, right? The tactics used are similar still. Can we talk about that a bit?
Yes. Well, as you have mentioned, it's the similarities are endless, and I notice it. Like I started noticing it once I came as a guest to Canada, to so-called Canada, to Turtle Island, because the occupation that is happening in Palestine and the occupation that is happening here, it is happening on two opposite parts of the world. So drawing these similarities and drawing these, opening your eyes to how history repeats itself and how we allow it to continue happening here and there, blows my mind. That the incredible amount of similarities, but it also makes me think how colonial powers are not really that original. They're using the same tactics, they're using the same ways to oppress people, to ethnically cleanse people. The same way whatever they're using in Palestine has been used here and still been used here, just in a different packaging, in a different look. But we're both being marginalized, we're both being ethnically cleansed, we're both being genocide. Yes, the genocide in Palestine is extremely aggressive at the moment, but that doesn't mean that there's not a genocide happening here on Turtle Island as well to the indigenous peoples. And it is something that we cannot ignore. We cannot just pass by. And as a Palestinian on this land, it is my duty to fight the fight of my the indigenous peoples. And it's my duty, as because I have the privilege of being on their land, to do everything that I can to support their struggle and to support their fight. And I don't have the words to explain how wholesome and warm-hearted I feel when I see my indigenous skin also fighting my fight across the globe. They're so far away from Palestine, and some people would just not care because it's so far away and it's happening in this faraway land to these faraway people. But the indigenous peoples are always there for us, and they make us feel welcome on their homeland in a way that I don't think I've ever felt this welcomed. I've been in the diaspora my entire life. Before coming here, I was in Jordan. I was born in Jordan. And believe it or not, I was in a country where they speak my language, they share my culture and all of that. But I've always felt like I've never been truly, truly supported by the majority of the people. But when I came here, the indigenous peoples, they all show me the same amount of support and the same amount of embracement that makes me feel like, yes, maybe right now in my life I can't be in Palestine. It is the right place for me to be alongside these people, both of us fighting our fight together.
I feel like Palestine is freeing all of us, that your people are freeing yourselves and your people are freeing the world. And I deeply believe we have so much that we owe to your people for giving us the language, but also for modeling absolute steadfastness and And, you know, Jessa, the clip you're talking about in our From the Salish Sea to Palestine, I think about the people of Palestine, and I think about the images that we see and the footage that we see coming out of Palestine, out of Gaza, and also out of the West Bank, and the level of violence. And I'm not sure how I'm supposed to cut off my head from my heart. Like, how am I supposed to remove the intellectualness from what I am witnessing? And a true witness actually remains engaged and thinking and feeling. And I think a lot about what would the world be like for my people, not just for in my own local region or community, but in my own family. What would the world be like if people had have spoken up and risen up when they saw our children being kidnapped in the middle of the night and stolen away and put in these internment camps that we call residential schools, that they were held hostage in these torture camps for the entirety of their lives, that no school now anywhere on this continent has a graveyard next to it. They have playgrounds. They don't have cemeteries, but that is what we commonly saw and see with the sites where there are residential schools. And so there is no way that I will not look away from what's happening in Palestine, but I won't stop talking about it, and I will not stop feeling it, despite how awful it is to bear witness to, and how difficult it is to actually stay emotionally engaged. I think it is just brutal to feel so much suffering. And I don't think it's just because I'm Kwamok that I can see my people reflected in this current, in this phase of the genocide against Palestinians. I believe it's just my humanity. And that people can get, overwhelmed or worn out and decide they just want to look away. They just need a break. And to not see that as incredible privilege and as deeply problematic. Like, I know we have to look after ourselves. I know we have to care and soothe our own nervous systems and our own well-being. And we have to stay functioning as parents and as family members, and even as people who go to a job, right? Like, it's really hard because we can't even talk about so much of this stuff. It's distasteful. I was in a shop last week, and the manager of the shop came over to say that she really liked my jacket. And I always have either or both a kufiyeh and something that says I stand with Palestine or I stand with Gaza, or whatever way of signaling that I'm a safe person in the world. And so this manager came over and said, I just want to say I really like your fashion. It's your jacket that I really like. And I said, yeah, free Palestine. And she said, yeah. And then she lowered her voice and said, free Palestine. And I was like, it's wild that we've been conditioned that to stand in solidarity against genocide means that we have to whisper it. And I won't whisper it. I just think the whole world, if the whole world came together and understood our strength, as a massive movement, we would make great change. And I believe we've been taught that we're powerless, but we're not powerless.
I'm struggling with some of the things that you're saying because as a settler, I see a lot of my people doing sweet fuck all about the genocide. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I think if they were here, like they were here, and all we've been taught, though, there's a lot of people who seem to have not just looked away, but are condoning this. Do you feel like there's in your work, in the filmmaking, in the, centering the humanity of it all, do you think that can reach those people?
I feel like we are at a point where if you haven't woken up yet, I don't think what would wake you up. If you haven't been paying attention and you haven't been affected and your eyes haven't been open to the truth, I feel sorry for you, because what else are you waiting to see to move, to do something, to act, to feel? Not even act, just feel. Just have some humanity. So I feel like we're at a point. I know this might sound a little bit hopeless, and I'm not hopeless. I know that this is just a phase, and this is just something that is happening right now, as horrible and horrific and unimaginable as it is. We will survive it. We will come up on the other side victorious and free. But the fact that we still have a, a big percentage of people who still don't care, I feel hopeless for them, not for the other part of humanity that's actually waking up and opening their eyes and doing things. The people who haven't acted yet, it's haram. Like, I don't know what to say in English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I also have another thought that I don't know if it's about waking up, but I think it's a little bit about being very, very uncomfortable. And that actually sometimes people can see it, but they, the first sort of agreement that is made through colonialism is that some people will be comfortable at all costs, right? And so, that's how settlers arrived here. Was newspaper ads got placed all over Europe saying, are you a farmer? Want to come to Canada? Like, we've got this free land for you. Come on down. And like, all you have to do is trade in your heart, your identity, your stories, your history, trade in everything, and you are Canadian. But the land is free. And so people came in droves, and then everything was done to ensure that they were comfortable, including hide all the Indians from the settlers so that they don't have to see it. And then the story became hide the Indians from the settlers so they don't have to see it. But also, if you do see it, here's the truth of it. They are lazy. They are going to steal your land. They are going to take your house. They are going to, destroy your comfort. And so that's the foundation of so-called Canada, is this idea that settlers deserve to be comfortable. And we will not trade in our comfort. And what I think we're seeing with people speaking openly about the ICE raids in the so-called US is that it's if there's 2 white people who've been killed by ICE, there are swaths of blacks and brown people who have been killed by ICE, and still we can't get their names to be spoken, but we will speak the 2 names of the 2 white people. And even if we know it, we'll continue to do it. And so in America, what we're seeing is that people are starting to get uncomfortable, and they're seeing, for maybe the first time in their lives, oh, this is actually at my doorstep. So this discomfort means I will stand up against ICE. I will say, fuck ICE, fuck Trump, or whatever their signage says when they go to their rallies. But it took them being uncomfortable. They could not see it when Black people or Indigenous people or brown people were being murdered. They could not see it. And so I actually think if settlers in so-called Canada want to be allies to Indigenous people or to Palestinian people, I believe they must sacrifice their own comfort. Because the closer you get to being in solidarity, and if your solidarity as an ally is effective or impactful, then you give up your proximity to white privilege. So and then you are uncomfortable, right? And so we're seeing when people en masse get arrested or targeted by the police for standing in solidarity, it's because they've given up some of their white privilege by aligning with those of us who are still being murdered at greater numbers than anybody else. And I don't even know where all that's supposed to go, but those are some of the this idea that, but it's so uncomfortable. And also one of the things about people wanting to be comfortable is they center their own comfort more than what is the issue at hand, what is the struggle. Like in our struggle for collective liberation, why is our comfort so important, right? And then there's this idea of perfectionism, like, oh, if I'm going to do it, I need to know all about it in order to be in solidarity. But actually, I have been in solidarity with people of Palestine for much longer than I've had a very big understanding. 15 years ago, walking with people in pro-Palestine marches, I didn't even know about what I know today about Palestinians and their history. So I didn't know that people lived in exile and that people cannot return. I didn't know about the right of return, but I didn't need to be walking alongside them. And I didn't need to do any of the talking. I needed to do the listening. And so you don't have to do it perfect. And the best way to learn how to do it well and effectively is to just get in there like a dirty shirt and commit yourself and be alongside in the movement.
Be ready to listen. Listen and maybe not lead. I think that makes some folks uncomfortable as well. But knowing these connections and, even exploring them more deeply, how do you think we can organize to that effect? How can we not just say we're in solidarity from Squamish to Palestine? How does that manifest on the ground?
I guess one of the things is that in order for somebody to be part of a movement, in order for somebody to be part of a relationship, they need to bring something to the table. And I would assume that we all have a thing that is our superpower, that is our strength, that is our gift, that is our skill set. So bring it to the movement, because every movement needs to have every skill set, every superpower. And also, so I'm very, I don't even know what the word is. I just have a sound in my head. I'm very doop-da-doop-da-da with technology or social media. I'm not savvy at all. But that doesn't mean that I can't partner with people who have the skill set and who have the creativity and ask them to help me say something I'm trying to say. And also, that's not the only thing that we need to be doing, right? So we need people on the front lines, and we need people working in policy. And, here's something we need in Canada. We need lawyers who are not fucking Zionists. Like, where are all the anti-Zionist lawyers? So, anyone who, like myself, who's been dragged through the legal system for the last year and a half for speaking out for Palestine, who's been targeted by major organizations, City of Vancouver, they lawyered up and they investigated me, and there was a massive threat to me and to my own well-being and to my family's well-being. And also another organization that all I can say is all matters resolved. But I am telling you, it was so hard to find anti-Zionist lawyers. So anyone who's listening to this, if you are a lawyer or if you know lawyers who are pro-Palestine, get out there and do pro bono work. Get out there and find a way to align yourselves and don't get paid for it, because not everybody has to receive monetary compensation in the revolution. And we are in the revolution. And if people are not understanding their role in it, then actually figure out what your skill set is and do it. If it is painting, if it is feeding people, if it is caring for people's children, there is always a role.
And if I want to add to what Jada has beautifully said, I would say use your privilege to amplify our voices. Use the privilege that you have to amplify our voices. Use the privilege you have. If you can open a door, just open that door. Open that door for a Palestinian person or an indigenous person. Just amplify the voice and open doors. Use your privilege for good.
There's also, that we're seeing this piece of use your privilege for good. That is like really woven in tightly with comfort, right? Privilege and comfort, and that I think people really need to examine in their territorial acknowledgements or land acknowledgements or whatever they call them, what is the action item? And because it starts there, that we just normalize occupation at every turn. And so we do a land acknowledgement like, yes, this is the traditional territory of the blah, blah, and blah. And, beyond that, I'm not sure why we're saying it. And so, yes, then what? And I think that's the beautiful question for everyone to be asking themselves. Like, oh yeah, I have people will say in so-called Canada, well, I have a lot of privilege. And the next thing is, and then what? Like, ask yourself that rather than like interrogate your own sense of identity. And if you've got that privilege, what's your responsibility to do with it?
I think a lot of people do struggle with that, and some may feel they don't have anything to contribute or don't know where to start. So I hope they're hearing what you're having to say, because it might not feel like a superpower, but it's a skill set, and it's a myriad. Like you listed off a few, but it is endless, from PR, legal skills, art, all of it, data entry. It really is, and it will take an army of us. So anything anybody can do to connect movements is critical. Before we go, you hinted in the film that the state actually does not want us to make these connections, right? Obviously, it leads us to questioning our history and Canadian identity, but also you've already demonstrated how both of you as individuals are stronger because of one another, but how those movements are building and holding each other up and holding space for one another. Can you speak to, again, just how those things stay connected? You made a film together, but then what, right? How do we maintain those relationships and spread them across, other movements? I'm thinking climate justice as well, where Indigenous people are doing a lot of the heavy lifting there, but there's clearly not without settler infrastructure, right? There's NGOs and organizations all over the place. So we need to connect everyone, but in the right way. Can you speak to how we can do that better than we are now? Or what we are doing right to bring those movements all together?
The first thing that colonialism does to everybody is it tells them to see everything as separate, to silo everything. And then we create even as a person, we are not whole beings. We are siloed into mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, right? And so, but actually that's the wholeness of somebody. And then we have an education system that the very foundation of the education system is to create little workers and to put people into silos, like you're good at math, or you're good at art, or you're good at physical education. And it's all siloed rather than teaching us that everything is interwoven. And that's why Indigenous people are so on brand for every single part of the world, is because we see the relationality of everything and that nothing exists without another. And that we don't, as a people around the world, our values, our core values are about our belongingness and our relationality. And we even end our prayers, if in English, with all my relations. And what we're doing there is we're reminding, that everything is connected. And so I actually feel like, you can find math everywhere, and we don't need to have it as one aspect of education. And movements are like that, that being an activist only means I see an injustice and I won't sit back. I want to do something. That's all it is. And there is injustice everywhere. And so the invitation for people who are not sure how to engage is just for a second, like flip it and see, can you even imagine what this person is living through? And if you can't quite imagine it, and you can't quite imagine what brought this person to this place, that's where you go and start doing the learning. And actually to start to remove the silos feels like an act of indigenizing a space, or, sometimes we call it decolonizing, but I don't think we can decolonize colonialism. Like, we just need to overhaul the whole thing, right? And actually just understanding that we're more connected than we are different, and how exciting that can be, that it isn't just hard to do that, but maybe it's the best thing we've ever done is to connect to others. Maybe we're richer and better for it.
And like a settler way of looking at relations is often just like your blood relatives, right? So to hear that means more than that is news to me. And I know that there's a piece of not just humanity, but that connection to those relations, and specifically the land, that is missing from my upbringing, from my culture. Rawan, did you want to speak to that at all?
I was so taken by what Jada was saying that I actually forgot the question.
We started talking about separation and the fact that the state would rather us not work together. So how we can better work together. But, decolonizing or breaking down those silos was a great example. And I just wanted to challenge you a little bit. Like, the decolonizing obviously has to happen system-wide, but those little pockets that are created help model what will come after, right? So tiny little spaces. It's still, I just didn't want anyone to feel like maybe it's not worthwhile because it's not, you're not in the process of decolonizing everything, but we need lessons. So we have almost no models, people who've grown up in this and have been void of other examples of living, right? There really are no alternatives even in our minds sometimes. And so any efforts to take this space, that space, and the other space, and to show, to actually demonstrate an alternative, I think is so valuable. It is part of the process of decolonization. We just have to play this really long game that is so terribly frustrating to think of it that way. I struggle with that.
I think these small pockets, the power in these small pockets is that it shows, it gives you a glimpse of the world that is waiting to be born. And it's being incubated in these small pockets. This is the word that we're gonna make it a reality. It's in pockets, but these pockets are gonna give birth to this new world that is kind, that is one, that is wholesome, and where we are humans first and everything else second. That is the power and beauty of these pockets, and that is why it is very crucial to have them and to find them, for people who haven't found them yet, to find them and exist in them, and put something of your own, something from your heart into them to make them flourish and become bigger and stronger.
Yeah, and colonialism, it, as long as colonialism has existed, it is a destructive force. It is, even just the word colonialism kind of whitewashes what it actually is, right? Like, it is intense, ongoing violence, and it has taken where, I know we were colonized, the process of colonialism started much earlier in the east of so-called Canada. Then here, it's only been about 150 years where I'm from. And so it's a much more recent beginning to that process. But, it's taken 150 years for things to get to where they are, to where, my people have been reduced to 4 to 6% of the population. We were 100% of the population, and we are now 4 to 6% of the population. And things are very, very uncomfortable for us. Like we look at some of the bills that are being passed through Senate, right? Like if we look at Bill C5, and it's sort of out there as an environmental bill, like it's to push the economy faster, which is at the peril of Indigenous people and our lands. And so, now we're reviewing UNDRIP and DRIPA, and we're starting to look at these policies that are actually, so much of it is being challenged right now, that if we think about decolonizing, if we're going to decolonize all of colonialism, it's a long game. That we can't think about, well, what gets done right now in this fiscal year. Because actually, these are not things that are going to be funded. These are things that we need to invest our whole life into. And that we have to get very, very selfless and recognize, I won't live to see this play out, but I will commit my life to it. And, when we think about Rawan and myself, and part of what we're doing as being part of decolonizing is uplifting the stories and the voices of our people, because those stories and voices can't be told in mainstream culture because they're too busy being absorbed and erased, right? We're being expected to assimilate at every turn, but it's a long process. And if you take it as one, like if I want to remain in my Coast Salish identity, then I need to be speaking Hulk Aminum, and I need to be learning weaving, and I need to be learning canoeing, and I need to be learning our songs. And also I need to have a job because I need to pay rent. And so to be Coast Salish is almost like being asked to be done off the side of my desk. And there's no monetary value in it. So why are we going to pay attention to where we come from? But it doesn't mean we give up on it. And so for people who want to be in solidarity with Indigenous people and with Palestinians, it means knowing that it won't be perfect, knowing it will be a long, maybe it was you, Rawan, who talked with me about, we don't think in weeks and months as Palestinians, we think in a lifetime. And time is a different conversation because we are committing our full lives to something. And it's not giving up our life, it's committing our life. And that I don't think we can continue to do things because it pleases us individually or because we want to see it or we want to be known for it or get social capital for it. Because when it comes to standing alongside Indigenous people or alongside Palestinian people who are Indigenous to Palestine, but to walk alongside of us, it actually means that you will make people uncomfortable. People will think you're negative. People will think you're critical. People, you will lose popularity contests and maybe won't get invited to Christmas dinner. And are we still willing to do it? And even that is a gesture of decolonizing, to say, at my family dinner, I will talk about these things that are true. I will talk about the truth of how Canada was formed. And so we can do it in our personal spaces. We can do it in our workspaces. And I think the most radical way of decolonizing is raise our kids as the next generation of warriors and arm them with relationships with Indigenous and Palestinian people. Like bring them into the most loving spaces so that they will fight with their whole, real chest forward kind of fighting with our people. And, everybody who is a a Zionist was raised in a Zionist home. So it had to come from somewhere. Everyone who was a white supremacist was raised in a family of white supremacists. It had to come from somewhere. So it's actually parents are the first point of contact for both white supremacy and racism and for radical decolonization, right? Like that's, I don't know. I wanted to say something hopeful. That feels really hopeful to me.
As a mom, that leaves me incredibly hopeful and validated in a way.
If I may add something to what Jada said, as she mentioned that, yes, standing up would make you uncomfortable and would make you lose popularity for sure, but it would also introduce you to a community that is so welcoming and so loving that you will feel like at ease and you would feel like you are where you're supposed to be once you are within this community.
Yeah, that's really true.
I think we'll maybe leave it at that because it was a hopeful way to leave off the audience, despite all the hardships that we talk about.
And I wonder, I want to jump in and just do a little plug for our Drawing Wisdom film from the Salish Sea to Palestine. If people are wondering what is an actionable item that you can do right now, you can go to the Drawing Wisdom website and you can make a donation there towards our film. So right now we have 14 minutes of footage that we've been able to create and edit together, but we actually want to have a feature-length documentary and we can't get funded for it because of all of the silencing of Palestinian solidarity work. And so if you really want to know how do we get these stories out there, you get to be part of it. And any donation between $25 and $2,000 is welcome. And also spread that to your friend circles and to invest in what you want to see, both emotionally, but also monetarily, if you can. And if you can't afford to make a monetary donation, if you can't afford to send money to our film, what you can do is you can spread the word and you can share it with people. And then you can know you are part of this very loving community. And it's a story about love. It's the love of our people. It's the love of our homelands. It's the love of collective liberation, of justice. And that's just a love story. There's nothing controversial about it. And so when we're struggling to find ways, start with one little thing. Just click on Drawing Wisdom, go to the website, make a donation.
I'll be sure to, as we always do, check for the call to action in the show notes, and you will find a link to exactly what Jada's talking about there. We'll try to make it as easy as possible for folks to contribute. I've also seen people hosting screenings as a means to raise not only awareness, but funds. So if you're a local Pali group looking for an activity, perhaps you could do that as well. I very, very, very much appreciate not just your time coming into the studio, but the work that you do creating those pockets that we were talking about that are so incredibly valuable to all the movements. And I think you've made the case for that. So thank you for coming on and for all of your work in the resistance.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. Also, a very big thank you to the producer of our show, Santiago Halu Quintero. Blueprints of Disruption is an independent production operated cooperatively. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption. If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.